handle at Smart24 TV. The Facebook is Smart24 TV Official. And then also Instagram, Smart24_TV. Then we are live on YouTube as well. That is Smart24 TV Live. DSTV, channel 372, and GoTV, channel 394 is where you can easily get us on mainstream. But now, still on the issue of youth empowerment in Uganda, I'm still with Ivan Otim, and Ivan Otim is the coordinator, Youth Coalition for Electoral Democracy, and clearly looking at how the youth can be empowered in Uganda from the sectors that are available in the economy today. Ivan, let's kick off with the challenges that the young people are facing currently that need serious attention from the government.
First of all, when you look at our manifesto, we look at education as a key sector. And when you look at the recommendations we are putting in there, we reflect on them from the perspective of, for example, when you look at how our education system has been positioned, it has been positioned to create, to nurture young people as job creators, not jobs, job seekers, not job creators. Okay. So if we're going to talk about young people enterprising in this country, then we must be able to deal with the mismatch between our education system and the job marketplace. For example, we know in outside countries, the private sector does a very big influence on our education system, and the education system out there. In that what they are able to create is that they're able to create a situation where the MTNs of this world will walk into Makerere University and tell young people in the technology faculty that this is the innovation we're looking out for in the next 5 years. So then young people will begin to create that kind of thinking for the next 5 years while they're preparing themselves to tap into the job market. Our education system is kind of held on a script like it's not supposed to change. Even when the people are facilitating that script, they don't even kind of contextualize, and that creates a very big problem where we are nurturing young people out of the education system as just a career and not be able to nurture young people either to think through, to innovate, to create opportunities, and be able to match up with the environment in the context. Okay. So if that is a problem, then how do we fix that by allowing the MTNs, allowing a lot of private sector players to walk into the universities to kind of influence what the curriculum may look like? We don't need to have a fixed curriculum because that is not creating the opportunities for the future. Okay. But two, economy where we can industrialize even at night. That the young people who cannot work in the job market during the day can work in the job market at night. That we can have shifts. We can create that kind of policy environment. If we can create enough jobs, but if we are producing for a market, maybe export market, we can create shifts for young people. And government as a key player in that aspect can do whatever it can do to make sure that happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, speaking of, what has government done for you so far? Because we may think the government has done literally nothing for the young people, or we would think that you're setting up recommendations, and someone out there may think it's because government hasn't done nothing or anything at all. What are some of the things that the government has done to empower the youth, and you can stand up and say, yes, this has been important and we've seen some good results out of this initiative?
Well, I could say, for example, government has come up with in the past a lot of venture capital funds for young people. Okay. The famous one is the Youth Livelihood Program, if you know very well. Of course, that program in itself was kind of a benchmark to support young people. But of course, in its growth of life, it had very many implementation challenges. Okay. And of course, the focus was the changing dynamics of the rules and regulations of how young people would form groups, and also the aspect that we were just encouraging young people to form groups. And for me, again, that's a pitfall that we must be able to understand. That if we are going to have young people enterprises, young people must be able to enterprise based on their motivation. There has to be a motivation that drives them. If we are going to just encourage young people just for the sake, then I think we're going to create the challenges that we have. But government has invested a lot of money in that YLP, although it was supposed to be a revolving fund, and the way that fund was being pushed through in terms of remittances back was not doing well as for the lens of young people. So we know that government decided to push away the YLP from the aspect that they are going to put the 30% investment of the PDM Parish Development Model funds with young people's lens. So again, we see a great challenge in that kind of aspect. Okay. We know, for example, so government has come up with supporting mechanism for young people in the ICT sector, but we don't see this matched up to the real growth that these businesses should be able to grow, because we know that the support should not just be able to exist with just for a once in a lifetime. We should be able to see these businesses grow from their initial stage to their journey as they project probably employment, but of course also income to the economy in the long run.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, when you look at most of these particular programs and initiatives by the government, in most cases, they are to push and foster for the growth of a different sector that has been allocated in that way. Now, also, Ivan, I would want you to comment on something to do with social service, and then the education, because there was a situation regarding how responsive social service and health education to the needs of the young people.
So the social service sector, we're talking about health, and we know amid this COVID, we were very struck as a country with the numbers of teenage pregnancies. All right. But of course, we know that came out of so many reasons, but it showed us, for example, that as a country, we had not done so much to create an environment where our children could be protected even in our own homes. Okay. But of course, when you look at the social services in this aspect, in the AIDS Commission report, we see that burden has now come up with increase in HIV rates. So as a country, we must know that the cost of teenage pregnancy matched up with HIV/AIDS is a double-sword vulnerability. And if we have young people in this case, then we cannot have an economy grow, because the people who are supposed to help this economy thrive are either going to be faced with this kind of double burden. And whereas we have the problem at our hand, how to create back for positions on how to address some of these issues. We know, for example, the supportive mechanism on SRH services as interventions of combating teenage pregnancies, but of course also rehabilitating some of these teenage mothers has not been adequate.
Okay.
We know very many of them who had challenges of going back to school. So we had those challenges, but even then, creating the incentives for them to go back to school is what we need to do as a country. Because if we have girls not going to school, then we have probably children not likely to go to school, and those effects have a cost on the economy, not in the short term, but in the long run. And the policy actors out there need to know that whatever is happening right now, the cost of teenage pregnancy, the cost of HIV rising in teenage mothers and young people is a cost on the economy in the long run.
Okay.
Because then the productivity will be low, but of course also the levels of cost of healthcare service will be high to the country.
Okay.
And that means that the economy will be able not to grow to the stage that it's supposed to be growing.
Okay, and lastly, what recommendations would you give to the youth to participate in the economic space of Uganda?
Young people definitely want to participate. And young people are business starters. We know very well that Uganda has been celebrated as the most enterprising country in the world.
Yes.
Business gets started, but I can also tell you that business die as soon as they get started.
Yeah.
So if I was a policy actor, I would question myself, why do business get started and they fail to take off to the next stage? One of those is just like I mentioned, the tax environment. The tax environment is not conducive for young people. If we have young people deciding to start their enterprising, and then we can come to the next door and be able to want to tax them, then I don't think we have created a fair environment. Just the way we give foreign nationals, multinational companies, tax waivers, we must be able to come up with an environment, an incentive where we create the same for young people. Not only even young people, we have had arguments of tax waivers not going in for nationals, national companies. We have had narratives going against people saying that government is supporting foreigners and not supporting nationals. If that narration is true, and if I was a policy actor, I would think through and say, okay, I think we're not doing very well in this kind of area, and we must be able to create the same environment we create outside there,
Okay.
and the same environment will be able to fit within the perspective of how we want to grow this economy together.
All right. Then lastly, Ivan, your parting shots as you're winding up with our discussion.
So the parting shot right now is that we have, coming from a COVID-19 pandemic with desirous social economic effects, and now we are in an economic recession environment where the rise in cost of pricing, the rise in cost of foodstuff, the rise in cost of living has an effect on how we all perform as a country. But of course, importantly, the effect here is that the young people in this aspect that I would speak for cannot be able to help this economy go, because then the purchasing power cannot be balanced, because many of them are losing jobs. Many of them are out of employment. The employment is underemploying them, Vulnerable employment is existing. The riskiness of young people starting their business is also emerging, that the taxation is regressive. So if we can be able to create and balance this off and see how do we balance and create an environment where young people can be able to sustain the opportunities, also be placed in the job market, and that we can be able to have a double sword recovery plan. For me, that can be a very strategic framework if we are going to have a short-term intervention. That how do we create an avenue where businesses can continue retaining the jobs they are retaining them, but also paying the people that they are paying, so that then we don't have many people laid off from the job market, which will have an effect on the economy in the long run.
Okay, and that is Ivan Otim, Coordinator Youth Coalition for Electoral Democracy. Just a quick one, by the way.
Yeah.
on the issue of the Coalition for Electoral Democracy, is it the team? Is it should I say an organization? What is it about?
So this is a consortium of young people that voluntarily come together across the country and put these ideas into what we call the National Youth Manifesto.
Okay.
And because we believe that the policy environment in the past was not inclusive of young people, so we create a voice for young people to the policy environment. So we amplified that voice in what we call the National Youth Manifesto, and then we use that National Youth Manifesto to advocate for the issues we're talking about here, but of course also influence policy and also advocacy and legislation on the floor of Parliament. So then this informs what we call the youth legislative agenda. So anything that we think government must be able to take care of in terms of, for example, we have the graduate scheme bill, which is supposed to create an environment of how young people after university can be supported within that voluntary experience. Then we can be able to push for that on the floor of Parliament, and then becomes a policy of government. Then government becomes a practice that they invest resources to make sure that happens. So we amplify the voices of young people across the country into what we call that National Youth Manifesto.
All right, many thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure having you. And for the viewers out there, thank you for sticking around with Smart Means Business. We are still rolling though, so keep your eyes glued on the show. But that brings us to the end of our SMB topic of discussion. I return immediately with the SMB update on the Kenyan elections. Good morning. Transpired yesterday after the new president, that is William Ruto, president-elect, winning the elections with a 50.5% percentage points. Let's have more of these particular figures as you can see on your screens in there. Now the presidential results of 2022 with the presidential-elect, that is William Ruto, walking away with 50.5% of 5% of these votes, and then Raila Odinga with a 48.8 percentage vote count. It was a narrow and thin-edged battle between the two. George Wanjakoya with 0.4% in third place. And then the last person was David Mwaure with 0.2% in that particular election that just ended in Kenya. That is a percentage vote count according to the IEBC official results that were revealed yesterday. Now, the hustler in William Ruto is actually the new president of Kenya and replacing a former boss who is the outgoing Uhuru Kenyatta. Remember, in this particular presidential term, Uhuru Kenyatta has been serving as president. Meanwhile, William Ruto has been serving as the vice president. Now let's first get some of this economic standing of Kenya to see what is next for William Ruto as president. Now Kenya's 2024 Eurobonds extended losses with the yield rising 370 basis points to 15.855%. However, William Ruto has pledged to rein in debt and spent 500 billion shillings, that is approximately $4.1 billion, to support entrepreneurs and farmers, as well as create jobs for millions of the unemployed youth in Kenya, that are quite many. Then the election was held against the backdrop of soaring living costs and crippling drought. The public debt totaled up to 8.56 trillion Kenyan shillings by the end of May. So he has pledged to spend at least 500 billion Kenyan shillings, that is approximately $4.1 billion in support of entrepreneurs, youth entrepreneurs in Kenya and the farmers, to create jobs for millions of the unemployed ones in the land of Hakuna Matata. Very important in that space that you can see. Now, those are some of the predictions coming in from the Kenyan election. And just so you know, by tomorrow, I'll be giving you the figures of how much it cost Kenya to get this election done through the campaigning period, or how much it cost the IEBC to come out with these August 9th elections of 2022. Still, congratulations to William Ruto upon his victory as President-elect Kenya. That is it for the SMB update this particular hour of the show. After the break, I'm getting on ground with Bariji Andrew real quick as we discuss more matters regarding business. Stick around. Good morning.